the much-awaited panel discussion. With this, I would like to invite and introduce our distinguished panelists for today. Shri Gopal Krishna Agarwal is the national spokesperson of Bharatiya Janata Party for Economic Affairs. He is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India and an economic thinker. He writes extensively for newspapers, financial journals, and delivers lectures at seminars and conferences. Along with being a trustee and treasurer of the India Policy Foundation and Dr. Mukherjee Smriti Nyas, he is also an independent director on the board of PSU, Northeastern Electric Power, and a member of Board of Governors at the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, a think tank of Government of India. He was a member of the task force on MSME of the Ministry of Finance and former director on the board Bank of Baroda. We welcome you, sir. Next up, we have Shri Harshvardhan Tripathi. Sir is a senior journalist with 25 years of experience in print, TV and web media and is an adjunct professor at MCRPU Bhopal and a visiting faculty at IIMC New Delhi, Allahabad University, ISPP, among others. He's a prolific columnist, blogger and social media influencer with over 4.5 lakh YouTube subscribers and Twitter followers. His career spans renowned organizations like Web Dunia, Dainik Jagran, Amar Ujala, CNBC Awaz, P7 News, and consulting editor at NCDEX, producing over 250 DD Kisan agriculture shows. We welcome you, sir. Next we have is Professor Jaivir Singh, who's currently a professor at Center for Study of Law and Governance, Jawaharlal Nehru University, having previously taught at University of Delhi. Trained as an economist at Delhi School of Economics, University of Delhi, his research aims to explore the interaction between the law and the economy. He has published on diverse topics that include the Indian Constitution, regulation, labor law, competition law, corporate law, and international investment treaties. Next we have is Sir Vinay Naware, who's a distinguished senior advocate at the Supreme Court of India. With a wealth of legal expertise, he has made substantial contributions to the field of law. His extensive experience and knowledge have established him as a respected authority with the Indian legal community. We welcome both of you, sir. Leading and moderating this interesting discussion, we have Dr. Shubhashis Gangopadhyay, the founding dean of the Indian School of Public Policy. He's an accomplished economist and has earned his PhD in economics from Cornell University. He's also honored with a doctorate by the University of Gothenburg, Sweden. With a rich advisory background, he has counseled the Finance Minister of India and contributed to pivotal government research projects. His wide-ranging research interests encompass economics, finance, law, and patents, focusing on concurrent monitoring, evaluating, and non-market interventions. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. I would now request all the panelists and the moderator to please take your seats on the stage. Thank you.
So the way I'm going to do it is that I'm going to start with a fundamental question, right, that we have been discussing, especially hearing what Justice Chirameswar said, right? And given that, I'm going to ask the following question. Why do I, as a citizen, need to know the Constitution? I'll start with you, since you're just next to me. If we can keep the answers short, then we can have a more, interesting discussion.
I think basically because we need to know rights and duties and constitution, but India has a very big written constitution and most of our responsibilities, duties, etc. we are deriving from that. Unless we know the constitution, we will not able to function what is expected of our as a citizens.
Jaivir, there was enough mics over here. I just counted 5 of them. What happened? There you are. Now we have 5. Yeah.
Hello. Can I be heard?
Yeah.
Right. The audience. Yeah. Right. Just repeat that question. You want to know just.
Why, as a citizen, do I need to know the Constitution?
I think, I give you a very personalized answer here.
But Jaivir, you are an academic, I'm an academic, so I know we should be short and brief.
Yeah, no, I will be very brief. I'll get, I think and we need to understand it because in a democracy, it is what sort of is our higher law, if you like. And in a liberal constitution, unless we understand what are the constraints on government, what the Honorable Justice a little while ago, when he said that, gave us that famous quote about, the Federalist and the angels and so on and so forth. As a citizen, I value liberty, I value property, the kind of values that are, even this gathering is supposed to be pushing. Now, to allow that to flourish, I need a government which controls itself. And only the Constitution gives me the legitimacy to be able to do that.
थैंक यू। शुभाशीष दा को पहले मैंने बोला बाहर कि हिंदी में बोलूँगा मैं, तो उनका ठीक है, लेकिन वो हिंदी में नहीं बोलेंगे। अब मैं नहीं बताऊँगा कि वो क्यों नहीं बोलेंगे, लेकिन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्यों जानना चाहिए, नहीं तो आपको आम आदमी कहा जाएगा। सुप्रीम कोर्ट, कोर्ट, डिस्ट्रिक्ट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन कोई भी डिसीजन आपके ऊपर लाद देगा और कहेगा हम आम आदमी के लिए कर रहे हैं। गवर्नमेंट कुछ कर देगी और कहेगी आम आदमी के लिए कर रहे हैं, और आम आदमी वहीं खड़ा रह जाएगा। इसलिए कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पढ़िए, कोर्ट से लेकर डिस्ट्रिक्ट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन से लेकर लीडर्स तक सबको अकाउंटेबल बनाना है, तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पढ़िए। सारी जितनी डिबेट्स होती हैं ना, जो पन्नों पन्नों के डिसीजन आते हैं, गवर्नमेंट कहती है कि हम अमेंडमेंट पे अमेंडमेंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में कर रहे हैं, वो सब आपको समझ में आए। कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पढ़िए, नहीं तो आम आदमी बना के आपको हाशिए पे रखा जाएगा। ये एलीट्स का अपना बहुत प्रिय एजेंडा है।
I think your question also involved one word.
Is
Why-
that on? Is that on? I don't. बढ़ा दिया, ठीक है, okay.
The question was, why do we need to know Constitution? Again, we come back to the same question. What do you mean by we? If it is a man on the street, he need not know need not in the sense, it doesn't make difference for him, because his activities, his life is so small, so inconsequential for what is happening around the world. He need not know law. But if it comes to people like us, for example, I suppose most of you are students of law. There are many academicians. There are many who want to do business. There are many who are activists. They certainly need to know law, because it is that man on the street, it is that common person who may need some help, for example, from activists. Maybe industrialist may have some difficulties. He need to know the problems that he is confronting with. What are the solutions? What is the basic frame in which he can seek some relief in terms of violation of any of his or any of the problems that he faces. So it's a particular segment of society which may really need to know the Constitution. Otherwise, if it comes to a common man, or as Justice Chelmeshwar said, there are so many people on the streets, in jhuggi jhopadi's, they don't know Constitution. And it really makes no difference for them whether Constitution is the socialist and secular or it's capitalist-based economy. It doesn't make difference for them. So in that sense, if it comes to us, certainly we need to know the Constitution.
Okay, so when I said that, why does the citizen need to know the Constitution? I didn't want to make which citizen, right? But citizen was the description of the person I was looking for. The reason why I asked this question is the following. If we look at the countries, which have what we would call a welfare state, right? Where citizens have free education, free health, are well taken care of, are not homeless, and the usual things that Honorable Justice was talking about as, or talking in terms of basic needs, right, for a citizen. After that, the citizen can go out and do whatever he or she likes, right? If we look at the countries which do this, none of them have anything written in the Constitution about this. Whereas countries which write these things down in the constitution, Brazil, India, South Africa, right? We are the ones who are suffering from the lack of these things. That's the reason why I asked. That even if we know the constitution, are we going to be over there? That's the question I wanted to ask. That's why I asked the question. It was not just because what he said, but I appreciate that, that he raised this issue by making the statement that he made. Yes, Jaivir.
The way some of those concerns are sitting in our constitution, I think we have to be a little thoughtful about that. There are these series of duties which are listed in the constitution, and very soon after that or around that area are the famous directive principles. I used to always be very skeptical of the directive principles earlier. But there is a certain way in which, given our economic development, our economic state, I think it's very important to pay a little bit of attention to the directive principles. Slightly different. They're not justiciable, the usual things, how can you force people to do this, how can you force people to do that. But there is a way in which we can think about, if the directive principles were put into operation, they would make for a good citizenry. Part of the things of the discourse that we were having a little while earlier was also about, sorry, I keep coming back. To be able to give them agency in a certain sense, to allow them to participate as meaningful citizens, there are certain exhortations which are made of the state.
No, I understand that, but the question I'm asking is very, very pointed and precise, right? That to have a good life in a society as a citizen, do I need to know the Constitution? That is, given the topic, right, of the discussion. That's the question I'm asking. But unless somebody has anything more to say, we'll move on from there. Please,
I
yes.
think we have to know the Constitution, but the issue is who will define the Constitution? It is not the words that alone will implement those things, what is written. Now, you mentioned about basic structure of the Constitution and how the courts are expanding their domain through this, what is considered in the basic structure. Will Parliament define the Constitution? What is written in the Constitution? Will the court define media or public debate or public policy? That's also very important because
this is a good point you have raised because
it's a conflict of supremacy that is taking place into the four arms of the democracy. I think it is not only...
He's not a member of the panelists, so don't look at him.
Just let me complete my... when I read the brief that was sent by Sanskriti, it was a very interesting topics that came out, whether it is freebies. Now, even Supreme Court or Parliament is also not able to define what is freebies and what is social welfare. It is not written in the Constitution. So, we have to go beyond the Constitution. It's guiding principle, सूत्र जैसे कहते हैं ना संस्कृत में. It's on a form of सूत्र that can be defined according to the situation in the country. 40 मनुस्मृति थी एक समय में जो था धीरे धीरे society change हुई. Accordingly, we need a continuously definition.
नहीं, अब मनुस्मृति का नाम लेके क्या चाह रहे हैं? हेडलाइन लेके आ रहे हैं.
इसीलिए लिया था मैंने कि 14 मनु हुए थे, उन्होंने you cannot define what the 14th Manu or 12th Manu said and implement in the current situation. It is a continuous change that takes place.
नहीं, शुभाशीष दा, मैं जस्टिस
By the
चेलामेश्वर
way, I
के
am also looking at my phone, but not for the match. I have my notes here, so please, that's what I'm doing.
जस्टिस चेलामेश्वर ने कुछ शब्दों का इस्तेमाल किया और मैं भी उसको बोलता हूँ, फिर समझ में आएगा कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्यों पढ़ना चाहिए. सोशलिज्म बोला उन्होंने, फ्री बीज बोला उन्होंने, मेकिंग मनी बोला उन्होंने. और कमाल की बात ये कि अभी जब प्रशांत नारंग का हम लोग वो एक छोटा सा वीडियो प्रेजेंटेशन देख रहे थे, तो उसमें आया कि विवेक देवराय ने एक अभी आर्टिकल लिखा और उन्होंने कहा था कि भाई ठीक है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल रिव्यू तो होना चाहिए ना, इसमें तो कोई बुराई नहीं. अचानक पूरे देश में कहा गया कि देखो, विवेक देवराय ने कहा कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हटा दो, संविधान पे हमला हो गया. तो लोगों को संविधान इसलिए भी पढ़ना चाहिए कि अभी जो वीमेन रिजर्वेशन बिल पास हुआ है, जो नारी शक्ति वंदन अधिनियम है, 128th अमेंडमेंट, तो अमेंडमेंट विदाउट रिव्यू, इज इट पॉसिबल? तो रिव्यू की बात करने पर जो देश में कह रहे हैं कि संविधान खत्म करने की बात कर रहे हैं, इसके लिए संविधान पढ़ लीजिए. दूसरा, मेकिंग मनी. अभी जस्टिस चेलामेश्वर ने जो जो कहा उससे हम पूरी तरह से एग्री. उन्होंने चाइना का एग्जाम्पल दिया, आपके बेटे गए थे वहाँ, 40 कमरे का बंगला लेके वहाँ रह रहे हैं सब. पैसे कमाना कौन नहीं चाहता? कोई है इस हॉल में जो पैसे नहीं कमाना चाहता है? लेकिन जैसे ही पैसे कमाया तो कहते हैं ये तो कैपिटलिस्ट हो गया. इसके लिए संविधान पढ़ना चाहिए, क्योंकि हमारे फाउंडिंग फादर्स ने जब संविधान सभा में बहस की तो हमें एक बेहतर राष्ट्र बनाने के लिए कहा था. अगर वो है तो इस रिसर्च रिपोर्ट में भी, एक तो रिसर्च रिपोर्ट बहुत अच्छी है, ज़्यादातर से मैं सहमत हूँ, एक जगह असहमत हूँ, अभी लास्ट में बताऊँगा. जब कहते हैं फार्मर्स के इंटरेस्ट की बात करेंगे तो उनके लिए तो एमएसपी, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में कहाँ एमएसपी है भाई? कहीं लिखा हुआ है? पढ़िए कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. राइट्स की बात है, ड्यूटीज़ की बात है, और उसके इर्द गिर्द समय समय पे लॉ बनाने की बात है, जिसको पार्लियामेंट बनाएगी. सुप्रीम कोर्ट या कोर्ट्स क्या करेंगी? वो जो बना हुआ लॉ है वो उसके बाहर तो नहीं जा रहा है. ये है ड्यूटी कोर्ट्स की, उन्हें लॉ नहीं बनाना है. तो एमएसपी पर फार्मर फंसा रहेगा और इंडस्ट्री को एमआरपी देना है. इसको ध्यान से सुनिएगा जो मैं कह रहा हूं. मैक्सिमम रिटेल प्राइस फॉर इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट, बटन तक बनाएगा तो वो तय करेगा कि 5 रुपए की बटन है, नहीं नहीं ये अच्छे कफलिंग होंगे तो 500 के मिलेंगे. और वो अरहर बेचेगा तो सरकार में कोई बैठा होगा, ही डिसाइड. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में कहाँ लिखा हुआ है? कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में नहीं लिखा हुआ है.
Wait a minute. Here I would want to stop you, because this is the distinction we make between policy and law. So you're, talking about policies. That should not be, when in our discussion today, we should not bring those things up. Because
but
Constitution
but there is a law on MSP. I'm talking about MSP law.
Agreed. But it's
For farmers, if you are saying कि आप MSP पे काम करें, किसान को आप MSP पर काम कराना चाहते हैं.
Let's get out the context clear. But tomorrow the parliament can decide to get rid of the MSP.
Is it possible?
Of course.
Not possible.
Of course.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट की रिपोर्ट सामने लाने की हिम्मत नहीं हुई. सुप्रीम कोर्ट के सामने 4 लोगों की कमेटी.
No, what okay, so
Yeah, it's not a handicap.
well, what he said is that that the farmers can sell things through an MSP is not written in the Constitution, but it is a law, right? And I'm saying it's a policy. It is not a law, and that's how we distinguish between what is policy and what is law. So it's a statute, yes, that is meant.
Everything will not be written in the Constitution.
That is what I'm saying. So we don't want to deal with the policies because they can be changed tomorrow.
The basic working system.
No, but I am saying, इतना बड़ा आंदोलन हुआ, यही कहा गया ना कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पे खतरा हो गया है. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसमें भी वो बात आई है. आप जब फार्मर्स राइट की बात करते हैं, लैंड राइट्स की बात करते हैं, वो अपनी ज़मीन पर किसी के साथ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करके अगर सौदा करना चाहता है तो गवर्नमेंट क्यों रोकती है?
But it's not in the Constitution.
And even not in any policy?
No, that's a policy, right? Because the contract law that has been made It's not the Constitution doesn't.
लेकिन अगर आप इंडस्ट्री को वो राइट्स दे रहे हैं तो फार्मर्स को राइट्स क्यों नहीं दे रहे हैं?
No, that's a different matter. That's a political matter you can discuss with him. But I'm saying in this panel, we are just discussing the citizen and the Constitution, their association, relationship, etc. Right? Not through the legislature. That's the point I'm trying to make. Right? Yes, General.
Can you just repeat your question again?
So
In the context of the discussion that I actually lost sight of, or focus on the question that you really just...
the question I posed was that suppose I don't believe in the higher powers of God because he talked about higher law, right? Suppose I don't believe in that. I'm an out and out atheist, right? Does it mean I cannot have a good life in a country that respects citizens? Of course I can have. And therefore, if the Constitution is a higher law, why do I as a citizen need to know it? It's still entirely possible. In fact, what I want to be able to get at, which I wasn't going to reveal, but now I can reveal since he's put me on the spot. The question the point I want to raise is what I really need is for those who are running us to read the Constitution. Why should we, citizens who are busy with our livelihoods, right, running around, as you said, right, as you yourself said, right, we are too small to affect society, which really struck me very hard when you said that. I hope you didn't mean that. But anyway, so if that, why should we go around reading the? We don't have time for reading and understanding the Constitution. That's the point I was trying to make. But let him respond to that, then I'll come back to you.
See, I again come back to the same issue that I raised, that it's all depends upon what you do, what you want to do, what you are. You may lead a life where you really are not affected by happenings on the several issues which may have either bearing on the Constitution or which may have some which may be influenced by the Constitution. For example, I give you the extreme example. I have seen many lawyers practicing in not only magistrate courts, but even in the High Court. They are really unaware of the constitutional provisions. See, let us not carry an impression that for a lawyer and a successful, I don't say good lawyer, for a lawyer and a successful lawyer, you need to know law, know constitution. Because my area of law is very small, very restricted. I can practice, I can make good work or generate good work on the basis of my knowledge of that branch of law. If it comes to somebody who wants to influence or somebody who is really doing something which may have lot of repercussions on the, or implications, not repercussions, implications, then for him to be aware of the Constitution, for him to be having clear understanding of various provisions of the Constitution may certainly be an asset, may certainly be a useful thing to have. But I don't suppose that every person need to know law, in the sense that it is not possible. That's not the way the life goes on of the majority of the people.
Jaivir is vehemently disagreeing with you.
I fully see that. There is no difficulty about that.
Yes, Jaivir.
No, what you say is provocative because I don't want to, maybe in a good spirit I say this. This sounds actually strangely elitist in a certain sense, because at least elitist not in that sense. It's the old type of idea of rule by aristocracy or people who are in the know of things, people who are statesmen, who understand government, who are involved with government. They alone need to know what are the rules and regulations under which government can take place.
May I just add one sentence?
Yes.
It's good, it will be better if everybody knows Constitution. There is no difficulty about that. I am just on the practical way of the life goes on. I am just going on the basis of that, that's all. I don't, in spirit or in principle, insist that no, everybody need not know law. What happens on ground, that's the only thing that I have in my mind.
Right, but you see, I think this is then when our constitution framers put together a constitution, when they thought of this higher law, this something which is going to be above just laws that control laws. They are creating a society, they are ordering a society, and I think even as an activist, I would, for people who don't know or whatever, this is very important because this is how you get your conduits of your rights and your duties and your responsibilities. So from all points of view, from a practical point of view, as well as some kind of the idea of the nation, the idea of Indianness, from that kind of a perspective, I think the Constitution is central and is probably, at least I would like to believe, that is what binds us truly as a people.
Okay. So you want to say something? Yes, please.
Just briefly. I think the Constitution is must because enlightened citizens, and people should know, because the society, how much enlightened its citizens are, the way society's development and growth will be there like that. If people don't know Constitution, right, duties, their enlightenment will be less and the society, progress of the society will be according. Only questions can be who will interpret, and should there be a written constitution or with an unwritten constitution. But unless the society will grow or country will grow, as much people know about what is their constitutional responsibilities and rights.
You want to say anything? Because, okay.
हम तो कह रहे
So
कि let us go beyond this question.
Yeah, now that's right. That's what I wanted. So now I'm going to go beyond this question and just sum up by saying, since I'm the moderator, I have the prerogative to say whatever I want. I have the mic. So I do believe that the Constitution should be an integral part of the education system, especially in school, not wait till college. And that is because I believe that empowers citizens. If I know what I deserve, then obviously it empowers me, compared to if I don't know. So in that sense, yes, I agree. I just wanted to get what you feel, that's all. But now I want to move on to the next thing for two reasons. Right? By the way, I'm sitting at the ISPP campus, right, Indian School of Public Policy. We are not expecting everybody who graduates from this institution to become policymakers or do public policy. And I promise you, most of them are looking for jobs in the corporate sector. But their knowledge about public policy enables them to deal with other citizens, especially institutions, governing institutions, in a better way. So in that sense, I do believe that the Constitution everybody should know. Not for exactly the reasons that you are saying, that's all. But now I'll move on to the second question now. Because I'm at ISPP, because CCS, I know, does a lot of activities in the education space and in training young minds. Therefore, I want to go to one of the things that was here in the research on education between private and publicly funded institutions, right? So I'd ask you, what is your take on that?
I think both are required because there is a gap.
Sorry. Let me make it a bit more precise. K-12, in school, high school, right?
What?
Kindergarten to class 12. Yeah. So in private versus public provision of education in school.
I think both are required, unless because the capability or the resources only to provide public education through public is not possible. That resources are not there in the government, and I think unless we have private education system, that gap will not be possible. And it's a competitive world. Globally, we have to compete. And we are thinking by 2047, India may lead the world and be an economic superpower. So only public education system, that resources, I don't find capacity in the administration, because majority of implementation is being taken by the bureaucracy, and I don't find that commitment or that efficiency or delivery mechanism in the bureaucratic setup in the country?
I don't think I can engage with this question with any kind of, whatever expertise or knowledge. I think my opinion is going to be very pedestrian and.
Then we'll move. Thank you. Yes.
नहीं, मुझे
By the
लगता
way,
है कि
that was very good because indeed.
ये सबसे महत्वपूर्ण प्रश्न है इस पूरी डिबेट का। जैसे मैंने कहा ना कि पैसा सब बनाना चाहते हैं, लेकिन पैसा जो बनाता है उसके खिलाफ खड़े होते हैं। वैसे ही हर कोई क्वालिटी एजुकेशन चाहता है, लेकिन क्वालिटी एजुकेशन के लिए कहता है कि नहीं सरकारी वाला, हालांकि मैं तो सरकारी में भी नहीं पढ़ा, मैं तो प्राइवेट स्कूल ही था, शिशु मंदिर वाले स्कूल थे, लेकिन प्राइवेट तो हुआ। मेरा ये मानना है कि ठीक वैसे ही जैसे आपको जो वीकर सेक्शन है, जो पुअर सेक्शन है, उसके लिए सरकार जब कहती है कि हम इनको इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोवाइड कराएंगे, दूसरे तरह की हेल्प करेंगे, वैसे ही आपके पास जो गवर्नमेंट स्कूल सिस्टम है वो होना चाहिए और क्वालिटी होना चाहिए। लेकिन अगर आप कहेंगे कि देश को आगे ले जाना है, एट पार खड़ा करना है, ISPP के लिए अगले बैच में कुछ बच्चे भी चाहिए, तो यू नीड प्राइवेट एजुकेशन सिस्टम, प्राइवेट good quality schools.
Yeah, keep ISPP out of it because I said K-12.
नहीं, मैं K-12 की बात कर रहा हूँ, और इसीलिए मैं कह रहा हूँ क्योंकि जब आप क्वालिटी एजुकेशन की बात करते हैं तो ओवरऑल डेवलपमेंट की बात करते हैं। जब आप क्वालिटी एजुकेशन की बात करते हैं तो करिकुलम से अलग हटकर जो जिसको आप कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की बात कर रहे हैं पढ़ने की, जो दुनिया में क्या कुछ चल रहा है और आपके देश में क्या कुछ चल रहा है उसकी बात करते हैं। जब आप कहते हैं कि नहीं सरकारी शिक्षा देनी है तो आप पाठ्यक्रम पढ़ाने की बात करते हैं, यानी रटने की बात करते हैं। बेसिक डिफरेंस है, वो आपको किसी भी सरकारी स्कूल के बच्चे में और जो प्राइवेट स्कूल का बच्चा होगा बहुत आसानी से दिख जाएगा। कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने तो हमें इक्वल राइट्स दिए हैं, राइट टू एजुकेशन इक्वल है। वो वाला राइट टू एजुकेशन उनके लिए जिनको कुछ भी पढ़ने को नहीं मिला, हम इलिटरेट से लिटरेट कर रहे हैं। बेसिक डिफरेंस है, ये भी समझना होगा।
See, the primary education is essentially the responsibility of the government. But we know the resource crunch that the government faces all the time. And you know who is allotted the education ministry in the cabinet allotment. The weakest of the minister politically strength-wise is given the education ministry. That's the situation of our education in the government policy making. So, primary responsibility in principle is of the government, but private participation as much as possible will certainly strengthen the whole system of primary education. I don't mean that primary education means only up to class 5 or class 7. It can go up to class 10, 12. There is no difficulty.
Okay.
To say, just a minute, to say that it's only the government which has to do it, and it's only government schools which have to function, working practically doesn't show that that is possible for variety of reasons. One of the reasons is the commitment, the zeal with which the teachers should be teaching, that once it goes in the government machinery, it doesn't happen. And that's the reason public participation, the private participation is equally welcome. That will strengthen the whole public system of primary education.
I'll give you one example. Health is an important area for the government to provide for social welfare, but the medical facilities, etc., I talk about from the government point of view, are not there. And to create such a national network of hospitals, government hospitals, etc., the resources required and time period required was not being fulfilled, was not able to implement in the short period. The government went into the thought of coming out with an Ayushman Bharat, where insurance cover was provided by the government to attract private investment into the health sector, so that a fast time gap for creating an infrastructure for that. So you have to attract the resources also from the private sector, then the government help providing that welfare about the health, and then it also gives an opportunity, because India is a country right to center. Our party believes in right to center, market economy, etc., where private sector has an important part to play in the whole area. It's not and at times I call some of the policies as the people are saying about crony capitalism, etc. We say we have seen a period where there was a crony socialism in this country. In the name of social welfare, corruption, leakages, inefficiency was brooding in the country. So,
नहीं गोपाल जी, every party needs Adani. कोई साफ साफ बोल देता है, कोई छिपा छिपा के करता है, नहीं तो है ना?
No.
किसको नहीं चाहिए? किसको कौन कहता है हम सोशलिस्ट हैं और उसके यहाँ इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट को नहीं, रेड कारपेट वेलकम नहीं है? ममता जी के यहाँ पोर्ट कौन बनाए?
मुझे तो लगता है कि
दीदी के बारे में कुछ नहीं बोलने का।
सॉरी आई मिस।
मुझे तो लगता है इस कंट्री को क्रोनी सोशलिज्म ने ज्यादा नुकसान किया क्रोनी कैपिटलिज्म के बराबर।
एक सुभाषिस दा, एक जरूरी पॉइंट मैं सोचा था आप उस पे आ जाएंगे, थोड़ा देर लगी तो मैं ले आता हूँ।
नहीं
सोशलिज्म
We'll come to that. I want to raise the following question, right? That let me make it, since we're playing the India-Pakistan match, so let me make it as stark as possible. Tomorrow Pakistan attacks, right? Would we say that we have no resources? Hamara fiscal deficit ज़्यादा है. We won't say that. So whenever we talk of education and health, why do we say this? Education and health is something that is fundamental for our citizens. It's not a marketable good. Nowhere is health and education described as a market product. So why is it that whenever we speak of education and health, we bring in the concept of lack of resources? Isn't this the elitist society we are talking about?
No, it is not lack of resources. It is allocation of resources that's
Same thing.
important.
No. Let's not.
No. You have to. No, I give you one example. We were very good in education. Nalanda University. There were so many universities, but we did not take care of defense or securities, etc. And those universities went out of the country. They were lost. So you have to allocate resources. If you only allocate, you have a 45 lakh crore budget every year, around 70-80% goes into administrative running of the country, then you have to allocate 6% in education, health, defense. If you don't, administration, why industries, etc. are required, infrastructure is required, ease of living, ease of doing business. You see big changes because there is focus has come to ease of living, ease of doing business. So I'm not saying your priority cannot be that sole priority is education, sole priority is health. You allocate things.
Privatization, right? You're talking privatization.
No, not privatize. I'm saying allocate.
Prioritization.
Priority.
And allocation. Prioritize you do, but allocate some amount to that.
Agarwal, these are things that we have been saying for the last 70 years, and we are continuing.
No, we are doing it.
No, that's a different matter, but you're saying it. We are continuing to say it. Now, if I talk about evidence-based policy making, right? Many countries have moved from being poor to being below us or with us and gone much ahead of us. If we look at those countries, they all provided for health and education before they became rich, not after they had resources. This we see laid out in front of us in history. Recorded, observable.
So you are suggesting all resources should go to education?
No, that's not what I'm suggesting.
Huh?
That is not what I'm suggesting.
So we are also saying the same thing. You allocate to all the sectors. If you want to develop the country as a whole, you have to look into private sector, social welfare, education, health. If somebody will say why space technology is needed, but it is creating big opportunity for the private sector. We have 100 startups in only space technology. I have interacted with them. 100 startups, and it is creating a global business opportunity for India.
Sir, we are not talking about the current government policies. I'm talking about our philosophy.
So then all that
philosophy
discussion,
क्या है?
sir, then all discussion will become an academic and just
Why is this an
academic discussion. We
Why
have
is
to
this
talk
an-
practically.
Why is ensuring that every child that Honorable Justice was talking about, which is true, a 10-year-old on the streets, why can't we, or in the dhabas, right? You go to every dhaba, you'll see those kids running around serving food to you. Why is it that they're not in school? That's a valid question to ask. What is the point of knowing the Constitution as a child? If I know that पहले तो वो होगा, उसके बाद पहले innovation होगा, उसके बाद हम स्कूल जाएंगे.
नहीं थोड़ा सा शुभाशीष दा मैं करेक्ट करूं, क्योंकि कई बार होता है कि बात जब सवाल आता है तो लगता है कि बस यही वाला सही है.
हाँ,
पाकिस्तान जब हमला करेगा, नहीं मैं आपको पर्सपेक्टिव में थोड़ा सा लाता हूँ, बड़ा ज़रूरी है. पाकिस्तान जब हमला करेगा तो बजट की ज़रूरत, फिस्कल डेफिसिट की ज़रूरत नहीं होगी, होनी नहीं चाहिए. अभी कोरोना आया था तो क्या बजट की ज़रूरत देखी थी क्या सरकार ने?
क्यों?
नहीं मैं अपना जवाब पूरा कर लूँ. क्या उस वक्त बजट की ज़रूरत सरकार ने देखी थी क्या? नहीं देखी थी. उस वक्त हेल्थ एलोकेशन के लिए कहीं कोई कमी हुई क्या? नहीं हुई. वैक्सीन के लिए किसी फंड की कमी पड़ी क्या? नहीं हुई. इमरजेंसी सिचुएशन और जनरल सिचुएशन दोनों का डिफरेंस होता है, फर्स्ट थिंग. सेकेंड थिंग इज सर्व शिक्षा अभियान इस देश के हर बच्चे को फ्री चाइल्ड एजुकेशन करके दिखाया ना. लेकिन अगर स्कूल खाली है, उसमें बच्चा नहीं जा रहा है, तो फिर क्या करेंगे? हम तो अपने बच्चे को नहीं भेजेंगे, हम तो उसको गुड क्वालिटी एजुकेशन के लिए भेजेंगे. और हम सरकार से कहेंगे कि 1 लाख रुपए की प्राइमरी की सैलरी पाने वाले को 10 को और अपॉइंट करो, 50,000 शिक्षक भर्ती करो, 70,000 शिक्षक भर्ती करो. और उसका आउटपुट क्या है? व्हाट वी आर अचीविंग. मुझे लगता है इस पर भी बात होनी चाहिए. जब आप प्राइवेट और पब्लिक की बात करते हैं, यस देयर इज नीड ऑफ रोबस्ट पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन हेल्थ एंड एजुकेशन. आई एम इन फेवर ऑफ दैट. लेकिन जब आप कहते हैं कि सरकार ही करेगी, देन देयर इज इशू.
No. Financing. I'm not talking of how it will be done and all. In fact, seriously, what does the government do where the private sector is not involved? There's nothing that the government does, right? Defense, we need to buy privately produced equipment, if not from India, from abroad. The chairs and tables that the police and the bureaucrats, the judges sit on are made by the private sector, right? So we are not talking about trivial stuff. We are talking about serious stuff that should the government take responsibility for ensuring that every child is in school, right? That is the question we are asking.
I'm in favor
of that.
Yes.
Whether it's done by private or public is
That's right.
that's the choice of the government. But they should government is responsible for it.
Responsible, and hence where there is lack of finance should find the finance.
We
for
should
it.
not define in the constitution whether it should be done by private or public.
Absolutely not. But now let me get back to what you said. Suppose I were to just ask this question, that the reason why we are not going to think about resources when Pakistan, whoever forbid, attacks us, or what we did in Corona, is because it's affected you and me. Whereas the lack of education is affecting them, not you and me. How many of us went to a public school here, government school? You, I know. I'm saying you, I know. And look, all the rest went to a private school, right? So that's the point. It has nothing to do with emergency. You can use the term emergency, but it's only an emergency if it affects us. Otherwise, it affects them, and so we don't care.
So we are
Suppose
not.
I were
We
to
are
say
not
this.
talking about we
Wait
the
a minute,
people of
wait a
India.
minute, wait a minute. That's right. And that's the reason why we need to know the Constitution. Because we cannot see this difference. That any problem that affects the elite, it's an emergency. Any problem that doesn't affect the elite, we don't have resources.
कोरोना सिर्फ एलिट को इफेक्ट कर रहा था.
सिर्फ नहीं, it also affects the elite.
I strongly disagree with view on this. Strongly disagree.
अच्छा, please tell.
You are not giving the right perspective. कोरोना सबसे ज्यादा किसको नुकसान पहुंचाया? जो सबसे गरीब आदमी सड़क पे पड़ा है, जिसको चेलामेश्वर सर देख लेते हैं फ्लाईओवर के नीचे, उसको परेशान किया ना। जो एलीट था वो तो अपने बंगले में बैठ गया, उसने जोमेटो से स्विगी से सब कुछ कर लिया, 3 महीने तक सब कुछ हो गया, मुश्किल किसको थी? और जब हम कहते हैं कि ये हेल्थ और एजुकेशन के मामले में, मैं बिल्कुल कहता हूं कि हेल्थ और एजुकेशन में सरकार को कोई अगर है कि चाहिए तो बिल्कुल मिलेगी। लेकिन अब जरा मैं आपके वाले पे आता हूं, अभी लोग रिलेट कर जाएंगे, मैं तो बात ही ऐसी करूंगा जो लोगों को थोड़ी समझ में आए। ऐसा नहीं कि आप लोगों की नहीं समझ में आ रही है, आप लोगों की थोड़ी ऊपर की समझ में आएगी, हम थोड़ा नीचे की समझाएंगे। मैं आम आदमी हूं। जब इस देश में पूरी तरह से पब्लिक स्कूल्स थे भैया, सरकारी स्कूल, सुनो आप लोग सब पब्लिक पॉलिसी के स्टूडेंट हो, सारे बड़े लोगों के बच्चे प्राइवेट स्कूल में पढ़ते थे, मसूरी, नैनीताल, देहरादून, और ये दून कॉलेज वाले देश चलाते थे। अब सबके बच्चे दून कॉलेज जैसे कॉलेज में बगल में पढ़ रहे हैं। मैं अभी आ रहा हूं, आज मंथन में उनका एनुअल प्रोग्राम था, मैं वहां चीफ गेस्ट था, अभी वहीं से आ रहा हूं सीधे। आम आदमी का बच्चा जाके पढ़ रहा है और वैसे ही हॉर्स राइडिंग कर रहा है, वैसे ही शूटिंग कर रहा है, वैसे ही स्विमिंग कर रहा है। 2 लड़के नेशनल चैंपियन हैं और आप कह रहे हैं कि क्या करना चाहिए? तो जब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन हम जानेंगे, इक्वल राइट्स की बात करेंगे, तो उस तरफ जाएंगे। इसका मतलब ये नहीं है, और ये बड़ा बहुत ही, मैंने इसीलिए एमएसपी एमआरपी की बात की कि हम लोग जब कोई बात करते हैं ना, हमारे दिमाग में सोशलिज्म का भूत ऐसा चढ़ा हुआ है। इंदिरा गांधी ने तो इमरजेंसी में 42nd कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट कर दिया, ठीक था क्या वो? अभी क्यों वो बैगेज लेके घूम रहे हैं हम? हमें कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इसलिए भी पढ़ना चाहिए कि आपातकाल में भी हमारे ऊपर जो प्रियम्बल है, आज कह रहे हैं कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन खत्म कर देंगे, वो था कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का डिमोलिश कर देना। आप उसका प्रियम्बल बदल देते हैं, उसमें सोशलिस्ट और सेकुलर घुसा देते हैं। इसलिए कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पढ़ना जरूरी, बच्चे को पता चले कि हमारे फाउंडिंग फादर्स ने क्या डिबेट की थी, जिसके बाद जाके हम एग्री हुए थे कि नहीं करेंगे। बाबा साहब अंबेडकर ने कहा था हम नहीं, सेकुलर सोशलिस्ट नहीं आने देंगे। यानी सोशलिस्ट कहते ही हुआ कि कैपिटलिस्ट या एनी अदर फॉर्म, उसके आप अगेंस्ट हो गए क्योंकि हमने तो प्रियम्बल में डाल दिया। इसलिए कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पढ़ना जरूरी है।
Well, it's not just for reading the Constitution. What he talked about is the history of the change in the Constitution, right? So not, because if I read the Constitution now, I will know about it. And that is the reason why I think Constitution as a program should be taught in school, so that they can know all of this. The other point I want to make, since you said this, is I know you're trying to get into socialism, I'll bring it there. But before that, I want to make this point that it is very, very important to understand what he said. And the way to understand it is, let us think about our own national leaders, right? He just mentioned what happened during the Constitution, the debates and all of that. How many of them went to an English medium private school? How many of those leaders? Very few. Most of them went to local government schools and yet spoke and wrote in English. Government schools in those days were really, really good, right? I grew up in Calcutta. The 3 best schools in Calcutta when I was growing up were Hindu school, Hare School, and Baliganj Government High School. Baliganj Government High School, by its very name, you know, is a government school. But Hindu and Hare were also government schools, right? And people would queue up to get in there. So we did have very high quality government schools, right, at one time. And it is a shame that we destroyed that. That's the reason why I'm saying, why shouldn't the government stop thinking about resources? Why shouldn't the government think about it? Because that's how you generate the human capital that will give us all the growth and everything that we are looking for. Otherwise, what will happen, and this is what is happening if we look at the data, people are getting into private schools, they're getting into private universities, and the better ones are all leaving because they want to collect back the money. They're going abroad. So that's the problem. If we want GDP, we want them to stay here. The second thing I wanted to say is that job of education is not to generate GDP. If people are educated, they will generate GDP. But if they generate GDP, they may not be educated. And that's what we want. We want adult, responsible citizens, not just those who can get GDP for us. So if we look at education in that vein, all the arguments that were given over here were based on career. Private school में ज़्यादा quality, more English, more maths, more jobs. But education has a much bigger role than that, right? Education brings about integration. Education brings about, the ability to interact with each other socially, and that's the reason why education and the Pak attack was put together. But anyway, now we'll move on to socialism.
I just want to touch another very important part of this report about freebies and connecting that with the. Yeah.
So we'll start with him. Freebies and socialism.
Because you said about the vaccination and the corona time, fiscal deficit, you talked about those issues. I want to say ultimately who pays? If the fiscal deficit, without the responsibility from the government and welfareism, freebies, etc., what is happening in some of the countries and the democratic or the setup in the country, ultimately people only pay for it. And anything without fiscal responsibility is a fraud done by the people on the by the government on the people. You see oil bonds, who is paying? You see this warehousing corporation, out of budget 2 lakh crore was borrowed by those companies, and that was not even incorporated into the budget. So ultimately, this fraud on the people is also an important. So you have to be a fiscally responsible person to what is welfare, how you allocate resources, how the country will progress. It's very important we understand this thing, and that's very important part about the freebies that you talked. What is welfare, how is freebies, what is merit good, how government prioritize its expenditures. Governance is that. That's very important.
Yes.
हमारे यहाँ एक दर्शन है चारवाक दर्शन, ऋणम कृत्वा घृतम पिबेत यावत जीवेत सुखम जीवेत। कर्जा लो, घी पियो, जब तक जियो मस्त रहो। किसी को कोई दिक्कत है क्या? नहीं दिक्कत है, लेकिन आप अपने घर में उसे लागू कर दीजिए तो क्या होगा? जो घर खरीदा है बिक जाएगा, जो बच्चा स्कूल जा रहा है फीस नहीं दे पाइएगा, आपके घर में अचानक इमरजेंसी पड़ गई तो हॉस्पिटल में नहीं पहुंच पाइएगा। तब आपको याद आएगा कि फिस्कल मैनेजमेंट बड़ा ज़रूरी है। तब आपको समझ में आता है कि फिस्कल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी जब सरकार कहती है कि फिस्कल डेफिसिट ये हमारा टारगेटेड है, इससे ऊपर नहीं जाना चाहिए, देन यू एग्री। जब हम कहते हैं सोशलिज्म, और मैं क्यों कहता हूं कि ये दो शब्द इस देश में सबसे बड़े फ्रॉड हैं, सेकुलरिज्म और सोशलिज्म, इसको कृपा करके हिंदू मुसलमान मत देखिएगा, नहीं तो बड़ी दिक्कत होती है, पॉलिसी में भी आप लोगों को देखने लगते हैं। ये क्यों फ्रॉड मैं कहता हूं? जब आप कहते हैं सोशलिज्म तो हमें याद आता है हमारे सामने पूरे जेपी के सारे शिष्य हमारे सामने आ जाते हैं और सब सोशलिस्ट लीडर हैं और सब के सब करप्ट हैं, सब के ऊपर इतने गंभीर आरोप।
नहीं, this I will not allow. Please stick to the topic and the problem that we are discussing.
लेकिन पर्सपेक्टिव नहीं आएगा सर, समझ में नहीं आएगी बात। अगर आप सोशलिज्म की चर्चा करेंगे,
don't treat the audience as nincompoops. They can understand. So just make your point.
मैं उसको ठीक है, अच्छे से समझ में आ रहा है उनको, आप नहीं चाहते तो मैं उसको थोड़ा काट के समझाता हूँ।
वो पूछेगा ना, वो पूछेगा आपको कि क्या बोल रहा है, मैं समझ में नहीं आया।
नहीं, मैं थोड़ा तो समझाऊंगा ना, आपने स्टेज दिया है, ये हमारी भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है ना। मैं यहाँ से जाऊंगा कहेंगे बिना कुछ बोले चले गए, ऐसे नहीं होगा सर। जब हम सोशलिज्म कहते हैं तो हम कहते हैं कि सबको समान अधिकार मिलना चाहिए। यस, एवरीवन एग्रीज, किसी को भला कहाँ इनकार हो सकता है। लेकिन कोई कहे कि सुभाषिस दा ने इतना अच्छा लंबे समय से इतनी पढ़ाई की, कहाँ विदेशों से पढ़ के आए और खूब बढ़िया पैसे कमाया, कल को कहे कि उनके घर का आधा हिस्सा किसी को दे देना है। प्रॉब्लम है कि नहीं? अब इससे कोई एग्री करे? सब डिसएग्री करेंगे।
सब डिसएग्री करो प्लीज।
हाँ, बिल्कुल डिसएग्री करो। यही मैं समझाना चाह रहा हूं, ये कंट्री के साथ भी होना चाहिए।
हमें दे दें
कंट्री में जो जिसको हम कहते हैं ना कि प्रोडक्टिव है, अगर प्रोडक्टिव मींस की तरफ हम नहीं जा रहे हैं, सिर्फ सब्सिडी की तरफ, फ्री बीज की तरफ, जिसको हम कहते हैं कि उसका कोई अल्टीमेट कोई रिजल्ट नहीं है। आप कोई काम करते हैं, किस लिए करते हैं? उस पर कुछ रेवेन्यू आए, कुछ रिटर्न आए, जिससे कि आप उसको बढ़ा सकें। क्या आप इसके लिए करते हैं कि नहीं 10 रुपए है उसको चलो 5 रुपए हम पानी में बहा दें? कोई बहाएगा क्या? तो ये जो अनप्रोडक्टिव मीन्स हैं, अगर इसका यूटिलाइजेशन आप नहीं करेंगे तो ये जो सोशलिज्म है ये देश को बर्बादी की तरफ ले जाएगा। लेकिन अगर कोई गरीब है और उसको कोई सरकार खाना नहीं दे पा रही तो ऐसी सरकार को डूब मरना चाहिए। सरकार का काम ही है लोक कल्याणकारी राज्य। जब हम वेलफेयर स्टेट की बात करते हैं तो उसका काम ही यही है। उसका काम क्या है? अगर कोई कमजोर है उसका हाथ पकड़ो, हैंड होल्डिंग कौन करेगा? गवर्नमेंट करेगी ना। हम डेमोक्रेसी है ना, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इसीलिए बना है। वरना डेमोक्रेसी में कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ना होता तो डेमोक्रेसी ना होती, और डेमोक्रेसी ना होता तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ना होता। इसके लिए भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन पढ़ना है। जब हम जो हैंड होल्डिंग करेंगे तो उनको कहां तक लेके आएंगे? बेसिक नीड्स देंगे हम उनको। तो क्या है? अनाज देना है, बिल्कुल देना चाहिए। राशन देना है, बिल्कुल देना चाहिए। मनरेगा में काम देना है, देना चाहिए। लेकिन जब मनरेगा में काम ज्यादा मिलेगा तो इसका मतलब हुआ कि ये सरकार और हमारा पूरा इंडस्ट्रियल एनवायरनमेंट लोगों को जॉब नहीं दे पा रहा है। वो सिर्फ खाने के लिए परेशान है, उनको 100 रुपया देकर, और गांव में वहीं रखा जा रहा है। सोशलिज्म की एक समस्या और है, हर कोई शहर में रहना चाह रहा है, लेकिन हमें कभी भी जैसे ही बात करते हैं तो कहते हैं ये अर्बन एलीट क्लास है। यानी बात सबको गांव की करनी है, रहना सबको शहर में। ये भी सोशलिज्म है। इससे भी पॉलिसी पे बड़ा इंपैक्ट आता है। आप गांव की बात करिए, हमारे संविधान सभा में बहस होती रही। आप लोगों को पढ़ना चाहिए, संविधान तो पूरा पढ़िए आप। संविधान सिर्फ बना वाला नहीं, वो बहस भी पढ़िए। उसमें गांधी जी का जो ग्राम स्वराज की बात थी उसको किसी ने एक्सेप्ट ही नहीं किया। आप जानते हैं हमारे देश में गांव में संविधान को एक्सेप्ट नहीं किया गया और सोशलिज्म पर पूरी लड़ाई लड़ी गई। तो ये जब आप देखेंगे तो आपको डुअल कैरेक्टर दिखेगा, तब समझ में आएगा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्यों पढ़ना चाहिए।
Any point on socialism in the constitution?
The constitution, as I understand it, is not a socialist constitution. It is a liberal constitution. That's how I understand it. I think socialism was the fashion of the day. It came in, it created resonances for a while. And after that, it also left behind some unhappinesses. And one of those unhappinesses, which I will continue insisting on, was this removal of the right to property. If you'll allow me, I will speak on that, or if you, can I just quickly? Quickly.
That's the operative word, yes.
So the right to property, which was removed, is a troublesome thing, because we continue to have, as was said earlier, that I don't think property is that way a problem, property rights and so on and so forth. However, it has empowered the state, and by the state, particularly the executive, vis-a-vis the common citizen. And in law, this is never sufficiently emphasized, that along with property, the ideas of property, of dominion, I think imperium is an extremely strong component of it, and there is oppression and also the inability to use resources well, because of this sort of removal of right as a fundamental right, because it's a right against the individual against the state. The state has become much more powerful in this and is often oppressive. This is this bit of socialism which lingers, which I wish we could get rid of somehow. And well,
This is a very serious problem, and goes back to what he said, that our mindset, right? Even though we have come through 91, our mindset is a socialist mindset, and I'll come back to that. Yes, please.
Yeah, bringing it to practicality, I'll give you two examples what happens in the current, because democracy setup and politics today is making reforms, economic reforms particularly, very difficult for us. And I think the call of the day is economic reforms, new reforms, bigger reforms, sectors which have been left out of the growth or distribution. You have talked about distribution. If you are not creating wealth, you are distributing poverty, I think. And one statement I have been giving somewhere is, democracy and the things, the current situation, making reforms. And two example is, we went in 2015 about land reforms, and our government had to bring that back from the parliament. I was involved at that time, and again in the farmers, because for last 20 years, every policy maker or even farmers organizations have been talking about these reforms that bring market investment into the agriculture sector. We have to build warehousing, supply chain mechanism, cold storage, warehousing, everything. Bring them out of the mandi clutches. Because I was associated with commodities market, I've seen how mandi or adatiyas are creating problems for the farmers. And when the government tried to completely reshape the democracy political setup or opponent, so these are practicality. We have to understand these things, because our report is talking about land reforms, report is talking about freebies, report is talking about a right to property. So practicality is that we have to change the narration and perception of the people. People should understand, because reforms have a time period where benefits are distributed to a large section and at a longer period of time. But freebie or the welfareism gives benefit to a smaller section, identified section. So that's become difficult. If India has to grow, we have to change the narrative of the people.
Okay, one of the things I want to say is that whenever we talk of reforms in India, invariably it's economic reforms. Have you observed that? There are so many things that are happening in the society which the constitution is really important for, which has nothing to do with economics. But whenever we discuss, right, it's economics that creeps in, and I don't know why.
Because economic reforms are difficult to implement, and they have a longer
No.
benefits are at a longer period, and the benefits are distributed to the large sections of the population. But
let us not fool ourselves.
Huh?
Dowry is a bad societal outcome.
It's not an economic reform.
Wait a minute, let me finish. It will have immediate outcome if we get rid of it, right? To say that we are looking at economic reforms because they take longer time or, why don't we do this right away? Why don't we do this reform?
No
more
I've given
dowry.
you two examples.
Sir, my
Why
humble
land farmers?
सर my humble submission.
Yeah, farmers जो reform थे वापस क्यों करने पड़े?
सर दहेज लीजिएगा तो फंस जाइएगा, गलती मत कीजिएगा, कानून है
नहीं don't fool
रिफॉर्म
yourself.
है ऑलरेडी
नहीं लॉ है.
मैं इसीलिए
But
कह रहा हूँ वो
नहीं-
लॉ इम्प्लीमेंट एजेंसीज करेंगी. आप डावरी को जस्टिफाई नहीं कर सकते हैं, उसके लिए लॉ देश ने बनाया है.
Don't hijack what I'm trying to say.
नहीं लेकिन
what
अगर
I'm
आप कह
trying to
रहे
say
हैं
is the
इकोनॉमिक
following.
रिफॉर्म,
नहीं,
तो ये
अरे
सोसाइटल
सुनिए ना.
रिफॉर्म हो रहा है. ये रिफॉर्म ऑलरेडी हुआ है.
अरे सुनिए ना मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ. We are not seeing the outcome as we want, right?
That is the different thing. आपने कहा कि रिफॉर्म नहीं हुआ.
अरे
आप
भाई-
कह रहे हैं कि फार्मर्स एक्ट वो बना वापस हो गया.
Okay, let me restate, let me correct myself. I'm wrong. Let me correct myself. हम right to education pass किया है. I say it's not the right reform because people are still not going to school. You are saying नहीं reform तो हमने कर दिया. Right to education दे दिया सबको. भाई, we have to be a little bit more responsible. We have to look at the outcome, not whether we have done this or not. This is irrelevant to me. That is relevant to me. The purpose of right to education was to ensure that every kid went to school. It is not happening. So the reform hasn't happened. Therefore, we would like to focus on... No, the reason why I'm saying this is because you're getting focused on the Constitution. There is reason to get focused on the Constitution because it empowers people. But if we stop there, nothing is going to happen. As I keep saying, most of the things that we are discussing today, and we discuss all the time, were done in countries which have attained them through policy. That is to say, making the government responsible for delivery. When a policy goes wrong, citizens armed with their rights through the Constitution can question the government. But when the policies are not being done, it was all being passed on to the Constitution, Then we discuss about implementation, enforcement. The governments we can vote out. But the implementation, enforcement institutions, hum kya kare? So that is something we have to keep in mind. We have to get a little bit more, you're talking about being up there. Yes, we are up there. We need to come down here. Unless we're looking at the outcomes, let us not say that reforms have happened. Think about it. That's the point I'm trying to make. I don't want you to tick off that we've done this, 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 we're doing great. We have to look at the outcome. Because that's a process approach. That gets us nowhere, to look at outcomes. But now that we have discussed and time is running out, I have to go and see the match too. And it is almost 6:15. From the audience, I'd like some questions, or if anybody has anything to say. Yes, please. Can we have a mic there, please? And I will decide which panelist will answer it. Yeah. You can say, of course, but I will have the final decision. That's the institutional setup here.
So it's not like a question, just some what I observed. Like you said, no, we have we lacking resources. But where are we lacking resources in the field of education or health? Like, government is spending more than 1 lakh per student per annum, which is equal to a good elite private schools. So it's not like, the government is lacking resources, one thing. Second, I observed that, like, you said that the right to education. So right to education also, we have reached to the universal number of enrollment in school. It's another matter that they left out in between. So we need to tackle that also. And the third thing, like you said, no, I messed up. So 2 things just I observed. So let's start with discussing that, and then probably I'll recollect that.
Yes, please.
Here.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a wonderful experience hearing you. So my question is that, sir,
You in the plural.
huh?
Hearing you,
Hearing
in
everyone.
the plural.
Yeah. So my question is that, sir talked of the,
माइक उनका ठीक कीजिए, नहीं तो संसद की तरह माइक नहीं बंद होना चाहिए.
Sir had talked of that socialism was the biggest fraud which was invested upon us. But if we see the directive principles of our constitution, then the socialist trends are already there. It provides for the right to livelihood and all those things. So what is your take upon that?
नहीं, मुझे लगता है एक बड़ी क्लैरिटी के साथ मैंने बताया था, फिर से दोहरा रहा हूँ. इस देश में जब देश आज़ाद हुआ तो उस वक्त के रिसोर्सेज के लिहाज से, संसाधनों के लिहाज से सरकार की जिम्मेदारी थी कि ज़्यादा लोग कमज़ोर हैं उनको बेसिक नीड्स जो है वो दीजिए. दूसरा चरण क्या था, जिसको हम इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन कहते हैं, जिनको हम कहते हैं कि अब उद्योग धंधे लगने लगे, काम मिलने लगा, तो फिर क्या हुआ, कुछ लोग कमाने लगे, प्रोडक्टिविटी आने लगी. पहला चरण से दूसरे चरण पे. तीसरा चरण क्या हुआ, खाने के लिए नहीं था तो क्या हुआ, एग्रीकल्चरल रेवोल्यूशन हुआ, हरित क्रांति आई. उसके बाद क्या हुआ, 1991 का इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन हुआ. ये किसी सोशलिज्म के लिए अलग से करने की जरूरत थी क्या? ये बेसिक नीड है, लाइफ साइकिल है. लेकिन उसी में जब इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन हुआ, रिफॉर्म हुआ, तो एग्रीकल्चरल रिफॉर्म क्यों नहीं हुआ? मैंने ये सवाल किया. तो सोशलिज्म वाले ये बात क्यों नहीं करते हैं? वो तो कहते हैं कि नहीं, किसान अपने उपज की कीमत तय नहीं करेगा, टी शर्ट बेचने वाला करेगा. तो फ्रॉड कौन हुआ? फ्रॉड कौन हुआ? सोशलिज्म आइडिया के तौर पर फ्रॉड नहीं है. मैंने फिर से जो दोहराया, मैं एक एक शब्द कहता हूं, बहुत ध्यान से बोलकर बोलता हूं. सोशलिज्म और सेकुलरिज्म इस देश में प्रैक्टिस किए जाने वाले सबसे फ्रॉड आइडिया है. इसका मतलब ये शब्द फ्रॉड नहीं है. सो दिस इज द बेसिक डिफरेंस. सोशलिज्म है, आप कैसे कह सकते हैं कोई कमजोर है, उसको तो हमें हैंड होल्डिंग करनी ही पड़ेगी ना. ठीक है,
एक just 30 seconds, huh? Yeah, I give you one example. Public sector undertakings were, if you look into the history of public sector undertaking, 7 or 8 years back, public sector undertakings, one after another, banks, everything was reeling under difficult situation and they were getting into bankruptcy. And now you look into the history market, how public sectors are performing. So it is the governance that is failing. It is the governance in the country that is failing. Philosophy, capitalism, socialism, communism, ये सब डिबेट्स हैं, प्रैक्टिकल कुछ नहीं है. गवर्नेंस होनी चाहिए, एफिशिएंसी, इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, करप्शन फ्री इकोसिस्टम, सिचुएशन, ऑर्डर इन द सोसाइटी, ये होते हैं इसके. अदरवाइज सब थ्योरी है डिस्कशंस के लिए.
Yes, I have a basic question.
1, 2, 3, 4, 4. That's it. 5.
Okay, I have a basic
I
question.
have to allow it,
I have a
इसीलिए लेट उठाया.
I have a yeah, my question is regarding that the government is presenting data which might not be, I mean, transparent and which might sometimes be misleading. For example, digitization data regarding, I mean, for example, that they will say that, that we have so many, users, I mean, using Paytm, etc. But they won't be able to tell about the underlying infrastructure, for example, failures in health, education, or for that matter, the environmental degradation, climate disaster, etc. That is happening in the country at some point of time. And even on the financing inclusion also, they will say that that so many, I mean, numbers of figures, I mean, millions of figures are basically employed or basically have raised, their lifestyle has been raised, but basically they won't be able to.
I got your point. बस briefly एक बात बता दूं. अच्छा.
Not part of the discussion today.
बट मैं ये बता दूं, डेटा इज ए प्रॉब्लम, लेकिन मैं आपको बताऊं कि सर्वे और इज नॉट ए डेटा. अभी आप जो जातिगत मतगणना की बात कर रहे हैं, मुझे कई जातियां बोलते हैं कि हम पटना में उससे ज़्यादा है जितना आप अपने डाटा. तो सर्वे आपकी रिपोर्ट पे भी मैं ही कह रहा था, आई वॉज जस्ट थिंकिंग कि जो आप बता रहे हो कि practically I don't find कि freebies के खिलाफ, you are saying the people are not happy with the freebies, but practically I have seen in various elections we are involved, people are being affected and they are accepting in spite of knowing that it is in the long run harmful, still they are saying कि we want freebies. So survey को data मान लो, लेबर फोर्स पार्टिसिपेशन और इन सबको या हंगर को आप सर्वेस को कई, तो पॉलिटिक्स है उसमें, बट डेटा इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग.
Yes.
Sir, I have two questions. First is, why aren't we discussing about the maxim that ignorantia justitia non excusa?
No big words. I can't follow. Come again, please.
Ignorantia justitia non excusa. It means
Ignorance is not innocence.
It's a Latin maxim. England, from where we borrowed all the system, by law, has abolished. Now Latin maxims are not.
So English, बताइए please.
so. It's like ignorance of law is not an excuse.
Ignorance is not innocence.
Yeah.
That I know.
So,
not an excuse.
But the innocence is not innocence. That's a nicer way of putting it.
I don't know the law is not an excuse for anybody.
yeah.
Anyway, that is a limited application.
But anyway, so go ahead.
So it's like if we say that we need to know the constitution, suppose there's a rape victim, should she know about section 376 of IPC or should she know about the constitution first? Because 376 impacts her directly. So if we don't know that, what use is of her knowing the
I don't
rights?
want to discuss this right now because it will take a lot of time. But we can have a discussion. Marital rape, for example, is a direct example of, counter example of what you're trying to say. Knowledge about it is important. This is why the Constitution, knowing the Constitution is important. Next question.
Next is, in medicine we have heard of palliative care. So palliative care means that suppose I am having a headache, so I take an aspirin. But I may have a migraine symptoms that I don't address presently in the situation. So what prevents us from implementing this theory in forming policies that if a person is poor, give them freebies? No, it's not about giving freebies. It's about teaching them how to earn. I think that should be the greater goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
Governance वाला, हाँ, we agree. It's a governance issues mostly. It is not a constitutional.
नहीं वही कह रहे हैं रूट कॉज पे जाइए तो हम सब एग्री करते हैं.
गवर्नेंस के इश्यूज है.
मलेरिया हो है क्विनिन दीजिए, सिर्फ एस्पिरिन नहीं.
Thank you, sir, for the discussion. Sir, my question, you talk about the governance, we are in the same place in 1947 where China and India, and now China is the per capita income is $11,000 to $13,000. In India, still $2,500.
तो इकोनॉमिक्स तो जीवन की लाइफ लाइन है.
But sir,
अगर रोटी कपड़ा मकान कहाँ से आएगा?
Governance is not good. That we are below the China and East Asian miracle. We know that.
Because of the last 70 years.
नहीं, मैं तो ये कह रहा हूँ कि आपने इकोनॉमिक्स की बात कर दी, मेरे से कई बार पॉलिटिक्स में भी डिस्कशन होता है कि इकोनॉमिक्स से क्या फ़ायदा, कोई वोट तो मिलता नहीं, कोई जनता को समझ आता नहीं, तुम क्या बात। मैं कहा इकोनॉमिक्स का मतलब ये फिस्कल डेफिसिट, जीडीपी, इन्फ्लेशन ये नहीं होता, रोटी कपड़ा मकान आम आदमी को कैसे मिले, नौकरी कैसे मिले, ये इकोनॉमिक्स का ऑब्जेक्टिव है, यही पॉलिटिक्स है, यही गवर्नेंस है, यही है।
नहीं गोपाल जी, अगर उससे वोट नहीं मिलता है तो क्यों कहा जाता है कि शहरी वोट,
नहीं मैं तो कह रहा हूँ मिलता है,
जो इकोनॉमिकली एम्पावर्ड है वो एक ही पार्टी को देता है, क्यों कहा जाता है? वोट मिलता है, खूब मिलता है।
मैं तो कह रहा हूँ
सर, लाभार्थी वर्ग इसका उदाहरण है। लाभार्थी वर्ग जो बना है, जिसने बीजेपी को वोट दिया, वो इकोनॉमिक्स के जो उनकी पॉलिसी रही है उसकी वजह से वोट दिया, यानी इकोनॉमिक्स वहां पे आ गई।
बिल्कुल, मैं तो एग्री कर रहा हूँ।
अच्छा, दूसरा आपने आयुष्मान भारत के लिए बताया था, डू यू बिलीव कि वहां पे क्वालिटी ट्रीटमेंट मिलता है? लाइक बहुत जगह ऑपरेशन,
आयुष्मान भारत में क्वालिटी ट्रीटमेंट नहीं मिलता,
मतलब उसके थ्रू अगर
दैट वाज टू अट्रैक्ट, दो किसी भी पॉलिसी का ऑब्जेक्टिव होता है, ऑब्जेक्टिव था टू अट्रैक्ट प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट इनटू हेल्थ सेक्टर, बिकॉज जो गवर्नमेंट के पास इतना रिसोर्सेज एट प्रेजेंट एंड टाइम पीरियड का नहीं था, तो अट्रैक्ट प्राइवेट इन्वेस्टमेंट इनटू दिस सेक्टर एंड एट द सेम टाइम प्रोवाइड हेल्थ फैसिलिटीज टू द पीपल, पुअर पीपल. इट इज फॉर बीपीएल, बिलो पॉवर्टी लाइन.
एजुकेशन पे एक पॉइंट है बस कि आपने, सर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, लाइक देयर आर मेनी प्राइवेट यूनिवर्सिटीज.
Wait a minute. See, one of the important things you must understand about policy making is that its impact, as correctly said, takes time. And you can never get the policy ka implementation mein, you have to spend a lot of time in trying to figure out how to implement it. So experimentation is good. Before Ayushman Bharat, there was RSBY, right, which is very similar. Now, I have looked at the data on RSBY. As soon as it was introduced, we suddenly found that in certain regions of Bihar, the incidence of diarrhea just shot up. Because the RSBY, you could get paid, at I think it was 30,000 rupees at that time, you could get paid if you spend a night at the hospital, right? And with dysentery, वो drip लगा दिया बस. And कुछ हुआ नहीं. So 15 hospital and the person shared it. So that was a leakage. Whenever you do a policy freebies of this type, there are leakage possibilities and you need to block them, right? To throw up your hands and say, ye to kaam nahi kar raha is not the right idea. So it will take time. When you talk about the type of treatment and all, Ayushman Bharat mein, it will take time. So that's the point I'm trying to make, that it will take time. The more fundamental question is, should we proceed down this path, right? If we do, things are not going to happen overnight. There will be mistakes and we will need to correct it. And that's the reason why we need to keep collecting data, looking at it, analyzing it. Now you can ask your education question.
Like we are talking about the privatization of the education. There are many private universities, many private engineering colleges. Many private engineering colleges, universities, do you think that they are providing a well-qualified engineers, that like private engineering college, they have money, but they are not doing? And why the government is not taking the any action against that? Because you also know that there are many engineers who are not qualified for the jobs. Yeah. And there are many universities from where many students.
हाँ समझ गए. We agree. कोई बात नहीं है. There are. I live in Uttar Pradesh and I've seen thousands of colleges which are not providing education, proper education, or they are not bringing out. So these problems, so we have agree and we understand that.
You cannot want to believe in the market and then say कि ये क्यों हो रहा है. That is how market responds. People won't be going to these engineering colleges. There are many engineering colleges, since you're talking with them, they are shutting down, by the way, for that reason.
और उसमें एक और बात है, therefore we need a market. Intervention जितनी ज़्यादा public people say कि government should intervene in anything, और जब भी government intervene करेगी तो ये problems होगी. Because at times I say, people say government ने नहीं किया. मैंने कहा what is government? Who is government?
That you say because you are in government. Opposition में होता तो ये कभी नहीं करते.
नहीं ये ऐसा नहीं गोपाल जी, थोड़ा सा.
Is additional secretary a government? Is a minister is a government? Prime minister is a government? So whole structure is governance. So yes, are problems.
Okay, one more question.
हम आगे debate करेंगे.
Sir, as we all are discussing about constitution, and constitution also mentions we the people. So my question is centered around constitution. How can we impart the basic constitutional knowledge and values to the common people? By common people, I mean to say like illiterate.
Going to school and making sure that constitution is
Sir,
part of the curriculum.
it is the one way, but what could be others? Like,
Just for this, get everybody into school.
And let us do it first and then we will think of it.
Yes.
Thank you. World Bank did a study and found 25% teachers in primary schools were absent, missing. They're not coming to school. स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स का जब सामान जब्ती हो जाता है और वो छुड़ाने जाता है उसे नहीं मिलता है तो या फार्मर एक मैं गया था महाराष्ट्र के कुछ रीजन में जहाँ पे प्याज उगाया उसको लेके गए और जो वहाँ पे एमएसपी के प्राइस पे उनको मिला लगभग 1.5 रुपए क्विंटल कितना वो जितना वो भाड़ा लगा के आया था उससे भी कम था. ऐसा जब स्थिति होता है तो ये जो गाइडिंग ग्रैंड डॉक्यूमेंट है हमारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन वो मीनिंगलेस हो जाता है आम सिटीजन के लिए. सो आम आदमी इन कॉन्वर्सेशन विद द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. तो मैं वापस से वहीं पे लाना चाहता हूँ जब प्रशांत ने कुछ क्वेश्चन पूछे थे उस वीडियो में कि ये रिलेशनशिप कैसा चल रहा है. अभी के भी पूरे डिस्कशन में हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं इंक्लूजन की, मे बी इक्विटी की, सोशलिज्म की. हम क्या कर सकते हैं और ये मेरा प्रश्न है, हम क्या कर सकते हैं कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल फ्रेमवर्क में या कहीं पे भी so that we move the debate towards efficiency, transparency, accountability, delivery, effectiveness. वो कैसे लाएं जो आम जनता को टच करता है. अगर मेरे नल में पानी नहीं आ रहा है, मेरे बिजली नहीं आ रहा है, वो टच करता है. उसकी डिलीवरी कैसे इंश्योर कर सकते हैं? Then I think constitution will be more meaningful to ordinary citizen. उधर कैसे बढ़ सकते हैं?
Yes, please.
नहीं, अरे सर.
Gentlemen, I think I can sit.
No, before you answer. You understood Hindi?
I never said I don't understand. I never said I don't understand. I said I can't understand the nuances. I was very, very careful about my wording. Okay. See.
Yours was an unnuanced Hindi.
See, you referred to that Maharashtra, the onion problem. Please remember that march up to Bombay was possible only because of the constitution. Otherwise, nothing prevented the government to shoot down everybody who was walking on the street. Now, if the governments don't respect the constitution, that is a different story. But basically, with varying degrees of respect, every political party still has some respect for the constitution. They allowed the march to go on. But for that, they wouldn't have marched to Bombay. That's all. Any rest of it you can answer.
Yes, of course. I was hoping that is it, final. No.
No, it's important for me to echo what is being said here because the Constitution provides a framework for governance for all of us. There's so much talk of governance and so on and so forth, the right kind of governance. The Constitution is not merely, and this is what I've been waiting to say all evening and I didn't get a chance, so I will say.
Because you had this is unfair.
No, not you. It didn't turn around. We didn't get around to saying this, adequately. The Constitution is often understood as just these series of rights and duties and so on and so forth, and that's what we've also been emphasizing, but it's also something else. It is also the document which sets out the powers of government. And in the setting out of those powers of government, it is saying separation of powers is an extremely important element, and so is federalism. If it were not for these aspects of the liberal constitution, we would have tyranny. Already we have very practices of tyranny in the very act of government. We are all aware of that in various ways. It has been the case in the past. We are continuing into the future. Now, what is it that controls that? It is these restrictions around us, given to us by the Constitution. And I think in that sense, Prashant was my student. I'm a little annoyed for him to suggest that, that the Constitution is colonial and it must go away or it be changed. I don't think that's correct, in my opinion.
He is not here to defend himself. Okay, now I think we should.
Just one brief point I will say. देखिए आपके I agree with you that ultimately constitution है या नहीं है, it's not very big. It is written, unwritten, what is written theoretically, but it is at present governance which is very important, and our focus is on governance. Last यहाँ पे people students on public policy हैं, it's a very good thing because at governance we find that very low domain knowledge or capacities in public policy in every field. So that's very important. It's a good career option and good work. That is that public policy is where we lack people who are well educated in public policy, in politics, in administration. More people are required in that. That will improve governance, and governance is only thing which will improve the life of the individual citizens, and that's what the Constitution wants, that everybody should be well off.
Okay, thank you very much. So there are only two things I would like to say. One is that I do think that the takeaway from this discussion is that Constitution empowers the citizen, so it is good to know it. Right? You remember that Monty Python movie, right, where at a scene, right, Mel Brooks looks at the camera. He wants to answer nature's call. He's the king. So he wants to answer it, so he snaps his finger and somebody immediately comes with a pot. And then the camera only shows the top of him, and he looks at the camera and says, it's good to be a king. Right? So similarly, to be a citizen, it's good to know the Constitution, right? Because then you are empowered, you can do what you want to do. So I think, or you know where you can fight, how you can fight, etc., etc. For example, as the Honorable Justice just said, the people could do that because they knew that they cannot be stopped. At least somebody told them, don't worry, you'll not get shot at and killed, right? It's our right to do this. So that's the empowerment you want of citizens. The second thing I want to say is I need to clarify something because of what he said. And now that I'm the last speaker, I can clarify. He said something about my Hindi.
So you are behaving like a permanent member of UNSC.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Hey, when you have power, you use it. That's the most, by the way, that is the most important thing that we often forget. Because I'm an economist, I know this. When we talk about markets, we want competitive markets. Everybody who is outside the market and wants to enter keeps saying, market is not competitive enough, you break down barriers, etc., etc. Once they enter, they are the ones who create barriers. Right? Democracy is like that. It's extremely fragile. Before I come to power, I want democracy, I want transparency, I want accountability, I want all of that. Once I'm in power, I don't want any of that. And that's the reason why citizens have to be vigilant. They must know how they can fight, and that's the reason why they need to know the Constitution. This is the full cycle of why every citizen needs to know the Constitution. That's how I feel. That is my take. So now the Hindi episode.
एक और है constitution. उन्होंने कहा था कि he want to be in the cabinet. Therefore, we need a constitution.
No, that is for being a socialist.
Yeah. No, वो उन्होंने you पालकी वाला जी का you quoted. Be the
Shanmukhanand.
That was about socialism, not constitution.
It is like the elephant and five blind men. Very concept is like everybody has his own perception of the concept.
No, everybody wants to be in the cabinet.
Hey, my Hindi story. So our daughter was 5 years old. She just started going to school, 3-4 months हुआ है. So I went with her to buy something from a shop. I said what I wanted, the shopkeeper gave me, we had an exchange of changes, everything was all right, I was coming back. She told me, Baba, in Bengali. She told me, Baba, from now on if I come with you to the shop, I will do the talking. Do the talking. She will do the talking. So I asked her why. Because, I spoke. He understood. After all, the purpose of language is communication. So everything was done. So she said, no. I do make mistakes in Hindi because Bengali is a unisex language, right? We don't have male, female pronouns. So I usually get them wrong. Verbs also, right? I usually get them wrong in Hindi. You too. That's a general problem for non-Hindi speakers and non-French speakers. So now she turned around and she said, but Baba, your Hindi pronunciation is atrocious. That day I took a vow. Kabhi nahi. So thank you very, very much. I think our panelists and every one of you here, our chief guest, who has been patient enough to listen to the things about some of us barring you, of course, some of us talking about a thing that we know little about, right? But, thank all of you. So let's give a big hand for all of them.